to Chops Talks Ops, the not podcast where we talk about fun operational business, whatever it is, maybe things that you are interested to hear about and can hopefully benefit your business. So today I am here with DiBella. She is the founder and CEO of PROFiX Accounting and Strategy, and we are going to be talking about old law versus new law and what that means and all those fun things with it. So first of all, hi Anna. So
hi Celene. I love the name of your non-podcast.
Yeah, well, I mean, Chops is like CH, Celene Hoag, Ops Consulting. So I was like, this is Chops Talks Ops. Am I just rhyming ops and ops, or is it okay? But it's
a lot of rhyming happening here, but don't ask me for input on copy. That is not my specialty.
Fair enough. So your specialty is legal accounting.
That is true, yes. Do you want me just to tell you a bit about myself, my history?
Yes, give me like the 30-second version.
Great. So I started out as a bookkeeper in law firms, got my CPA, moved up director roles, director of finance, director of ops, worked as an interim CFO of a 100-person firm, had a couple babies in there, and then started at PROFiX Accounting and Strategy right after my last mat leave, also March 2020, also terrible time to start a business. FYI. And that's another story though. And so my business, I work as a CFO for lawyers, an on-demand CFO for lawyers, helping them with strategy and growth strategies. And then my firm provides bookkeeping and trust accounting for lawyers and entrepreneurs.
Love it. Also, episode 2.0, starting a business in a pandemic.
I would love, I can come back and talk about that for like
we will
8 hours for sure. Yes.
Okay, but today we're talking about old law versus new law. So what exactly does that mean? Where did that even come from?
So I work as a consultant for lawyers, and really we live in a world where the industry has just been changing a lot for the past 10 years in kind of every way. And so coming out into sort of this consulting role, there's just been a big adoption of new technology and a really big change, and we've seen it a lot during COVID. So we've kind of branded the two types of law firms, and it's really nothing to do with the people and everything to do with the structure. So it's nothing to do with the visionary, but everything to do with the current business model that you're working with. So old law would refer to generally old technology, old service, old processes. And so when I say old technology, I'm talking about server-based software, PC law, easy law. I'm talking about very little automation, and just very little process mapping, very little standardization, very little focus on client experience. New law, which is sort of what we start seeing just a lot during the pandemic, but I mean, I guess I'm saying that because that's when I started PROFiX, but a bunch of people starting new law firms using completely new processes and new technologies. So they're all getting set up on cloud-based software, subscription-based software. Their cost of entry is really low. They're not kind of struggling with the same things that these old law firms are, which is that they have all of these old tech and they kind of need to switch. They can start off that way. And then they're really free to think about other things outside of technology. They're thinking about client experience and implementing automation even more in their practice, et cetera. So it's really like where your business is. Is it old law? Does it need to move into new law, or are you new law? And we're having very different conversations with those clients.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I know you mentioned client experience, which is obviously a big one because the more your clients love you, the more they're going to come back. They're going to recommend their friends and family. What are some other reasons someone might like, obviously, if you're starting a new business, you're going to start with the most recent technology. It just makes sense. But if they're set in their ways, what they're doing is working, it's a hassle, it can cost money to change. Why would somebody want to move into that kind of new law realm?
I mean, the reality is if you're working and getting in touch with me, it's because you have a problem, and those old law firms are suffering problems, and their problems have become really pronounced since COVID because and I can touch base on all the different areas of law, but we'll focus on specifically accounting and document management because those are the two big ones. So if you have a document management system that isn't cloud-based and you're not used to having your employees work from home, and you have an accounting system and processes that aren't paperless and also aren't cloud-based, and just what I mean by cloud-based is you cannot log in remotely from your server. If we have to log into your system and then open like an old software like PC Law or Easy Law, it creates a lot of problems. It's never smooth, and you really just can't have your team work from home. Sorry, I'm rambling on here.
No, it's good.
What was your actual point here?
What are the benefits? Why does somebody want to be new law?
Yeah. So really, it's like you have to for recruitment. So recruitment's a huge problem, especially in Vancouver for law firms, and people won't work for your firm, especially like younger, newer people, if they can't access their systems remotely. And they can't do the work. I think that if you say, oh no, you can access your systems remotely and the IT company set it up, but they have all of these problems, and I see this all the time, contributes to downtime. It definitely affects your margins and affects your ability to retain talent. It really affects your whole business. And then the other problem is, even like the biggest problem I see is PC Law is a very popular old software that's just, we can't work with PC Law anymore here. And I have a lot of people coming to me, and they're desperately trying to find PC Law trained bookkeepers to service their firms, and they're really having a hard time finding them. And I would love to onboard that client here, but because it's so difficult to work in these old softwares and get into their systems, I can't even work with them anymore. So these firms already know they're having problems. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people working in sort of the old law workplace that aren't going to understand that they have to update. It's just when. Some might think they need to do it in 5 years. Some are like, oh, I'll do it when all the other firms have done it. Some are like ready to do it last year. That's kind of the thing. And then what I always say to clients is like when they come to me and they're like, oh, I'm on PC Law or Easy Law. What do I do? I'm like, how long are you going to be in operation for? There's some clients where they've been using PC Law for 25 years. They're wrapping up their practices. I often don't recommend that they make a big software conversion, but if you're going to be around for anything more than like 5 more years, you have to do one. And the firms that don't, it's all going to crash. Like those old softwares barely work. So yeah. It's serious red flags. So I would really say they already know that. Just do it now, like now, right now. Trust me, you won't regret it. It's not that scary. It's painful. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I do feel like the old law firms are really in a tough situation in that they have just a lot of changes to implement, and they have to deal with their accounting software. That I've mentioned, document management is just like a huge pain point. All new systems, getting everyone on board. So I do think that those old law to new law transitions are probably some of the most difficult. But don't wait. It doesn't matter. You have to do it. I don't know why you'd wait. It'd be crazy to wait. You're just not going to be competitive. Like there's so much competition out there now that are offering, like all the firms that are not dealing with technology as their biggest problem, they're implementing automation. They're implementing like marketing and sales workflows, right? Like they're focused on profit. They're offering, like no client wants to go to your office and sign something. It's a huge inconvenience and nobody has the patience or time for that. Yeah. So, like they're already figuring all of that out, and then these firms have to make the switch over, and that's a huge cost and project. So the competition is like just going to keep becoming more significant. And then the cost, right? Like the way that you can charge, or, the profit margins you can have when you implement new technology properly are going to push prices down. There's just no way.
That's true. Because like nowadays, one thing that I've seen a lot of is computers can do the work that humans can do. And are you paying a subscription, like an app, $50 or $100 a month to do a job? Or are you paying a salary of an employee? Are you paying like $4,000, $6,000, maybe if you have multiple employees, like tens of thousands of dollars a month of people doing like grunt work that nobody wants to do anyway? Like nobody wants to do the grunt work anymore when they know it can be automated.
Like scheduling. This is like, it's a pain point in every firm. Legal assistants spend so much time doing scheduling, and you could automate good 65% of that. But that's just, it's not that common to see. In old law, almost never, and in new law, they do use scheduling, which is great, but again, it's probably like not utilized to its full capacity. So it's a very interesting industry, and certainly a very interesting, sorry, my dog just came in, a very interesting industry to be part of, and a very fun industry to be part of right now, because there's just so much opportunity to help people and educate them and improve their operations and get them talking about way more interesting business stuff. I love talking about other stuff.
I've been remote for so long that I take things like scheduling for granted. I take things like, having a CRM or lead management for granted. I would, like I'll talk to somebody and be like, okay, so how are you managing your leads right now? Like people come to you and how do you follow up with them or like book them in or how do you kind of nurture that? And they're like, if they like keep following up with us and they keep harassing us, like, then we'll remember to intake them or whatever it may be. But the truth is nowadays people will go on, Google or wherever, they'll pull up 3 to 5 firms, they'll call all of them. And usually it's the ones who follow up with them or give them the best experience and the best feel and make it the easiest to give them their money and to engage with them who are going to get the business.
And I mean, like, even regardless of where your business is coming from, if you're not quickly getting them an engagement letter, and getting it signed and doing all that stuff, like you're just going to lose leads no matter what. But also about servicing your clients, like getting referrals. Like there are good lawyers everywhere, and you have to compete with other good lawyers. Here's a great example. So I'm divorced. Not to flag any firm, but I ended up self-repping, and I need my documents back, obviously. And I asked them for them back, and they were like, okay, we have like a bunch of paper here for you, and then the CD that you need to come pick up with all of your documents. This was early 2021, so less than 12 months ago.
And in a pandemic, you're like, oh good, I'm gonna like go drive to another city and get a CD.
You're gonna see. Well, I started to panic because I'm like, oh my god, my laptop doesn't read CDs. Like I'm gonna need those documents. Like I start working like, how am I gonna get this? Like do I have to call around to my family and friends? And I was like, this is insane. Like normal computers don't read CDs. No normal new computer comes with a CD drive. Why on earth is my law firm burning things to a CD? And for God's sakes, why isn't it a beautiful branded USB? So that I can think of you every time I look at my documents. And if I'm really upset, sorry, I don't mean to swear, but if I'm really upset, I'm like, I'm in my court forms, like, I don't know what's happening. I can't self-rep. I put in my beautiful USB that's branded by my lawyer, and I'm like, I'm going to call my lawyer back, man. I can't self-rep. Like, those are the things that aren't just taking you to the 21st century, but then also like adding strategy, long-term marketing strategy. It's just, and then,
or better,
then I'm not telling my friends that they're the worst firm because they burn things to CDs. I'm like, oh, their numbers in my face all the time when I look at my court stuff. So anyway. Strategy. I love talking strategy.
Even just like cloud-based, like having it in like Google Drive or OneDrive or whatever Dropbox you use, then you're not even spending money on USBs that can get lost, can get run over by a car.
USBs aren't even like modern technology, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question then. So obviously we know what old and new law is now and why everyone wants to become new law. Like nobody's gonna be like, oh, I think it's better to be old law. Things used to be so good back in those days. And maybe people are like that, but we're not talking about.
No, but they're going to be like, I don't want to do it differently. Fair. Yeah. But no one can really argue like it's better to do it by hand and like, make your clients find a place to burn a CD.
Yeah.
Read their court docs.
So other than not using CDs and adopting cloud-based technology, what are like some of the other ways that law firms, like what are things people are doing right now to move into the 21st century and become new law?
I think the biggest topic that I talk about with my new law clients is really, automating other parts of their business, but a lot of sales and marketing and lead tracking, and being a business owner myself, and having come from law, not really been super involved in that, even though I was director of ops. You have to track your leads, and you might be like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm too much, but in a month from now, you might have some capacity, and now you have this little asset here that you can nurture, and all you have to do is implement technology and workflows. And when you start tying it all together, Celene is also my director of ops here at PROFiX. She's implementing Zoho One, which is my whole suite of systems, and it's a well-oiled machine, and it's profits and it's client experience. When everything flows and you're not putting out fires 24/7 or writing the same email over and over again, I think a lot of firms, you'll hear them talk about templates, and they're talking about legal document templates. They are not talking about sales email templates, or even just client templates. So onboarding new clients using a templated email. That's not often talked about. It's often, I shouldn't say usually, each firm's different, but often you see each kind of lawyer does their own little thing, and their assistant does a lot of the work for them the way that they want it done. And no one's really adopting technology. Biggest problem you see is just like 65% of the firm will use it and the other 35 don't, and no one really has to. So
yeah, and even
I'm diverting off the question here.
That's all right. But you mentioned like message templates, and I think that's like a big one because it's so easy once you just send, oh, you're like, oh, I'm sending like an onboarding email. Why don't I just copy and paste this into a document? Or why don't I just save this as an email template, like in Gmail or Outlook or whatever you're using? And so instead of, if you onboard what, like 100, 300 clients a year, instead of typing 300 or however many emails, you could just copy and paste and kind of have a field for the name and the dates or change whatever information. It saves so much time. It adds up. Now, if you do that for like every single one of those emails that you're always sending, you can also then like brand it, like use the copy, make it more engaging, because you're not like reinventing the wheel every time. You have like one good version that you can just keep using. And
like as a firm, my own, firm owner, like accounting firm owner, you hire new people and you really, you know your brand, you know the way you want to communicate with clients, you know the experience you want your clients to have, you know how you treat your clients, but now you're kind of like passing that control down to other people who can't read your mind. And then by standardizing it all and standardizing that language, like just, God, like investing in copy, that's like such a powerful thing. And even if you think about the copy of your onboarding email, like the way that you can take your onboarding experience to the next level, I think that's what new law is able to focus on and talk about that hasn't been talked about before is going to be, is always client experience, like customer service and getting Google reviews, right? Like that type of thing. Like, okay, at the end, when I do a good job, I'm going to email my client and make sure that they get like a Google review. Like that is the type of thing that they're able to think about. That's all sales and marketing. And then of course, like digital marketing is the most popular thing I hear both old law and new law talk about, but new law obviously has more time and resources to focus on it. And which again is just going to give them such a long-term advantage, because every year that your firm ignores digital marketing, the other firms out there creating these assets that are just kind of like hamster wheels that are growing and growing and growing. There's just tons of opportunity out there. So yeah, it's two very distinct things we're seeing, and I feel really hard for bad for the old law transformations. I think those are very challenging projects that a lot of firms will have to go through right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned this a couple of times that it's it's a big transition. It's like probably not the same as like the Y2K, because that was actually just pretty easy. You just paid an expensive tech to come in and put a sticker on your computer. Just kidding. I'm sure there is slightly more to it than that. But like if someone they know new law is good, they understand why they need to switch to it, but they're like, I don't have it's a lot to do, right? You have to research and vet these softwares or whatever these systems. You have to figure out what the systems are to begin with. You have to figure out what to do, and like, how do you even get started? Like, sometimes it can, be like that big mountain to overcome.
Yeah,
are there, like, how do you do it?
I mean, everyone generally starts with accounting. I think you have to start with a tech, like look at all your technology. So what technology are you using currently to run your business? Put it down on a piece of paper. And start there. But actually, I think it's like you have to hire they have to hire professionals. Like I don't implement my own Zoho. I could sit there, learn it, do it. I'm CEO, a little bit busy doing other things. And so, I delegate that out. And I think that's really good advice. Like don't expect to be able to do this all yourself, hire specialists. But you have to kind of look at the key areas of your business, and we can break those down, like timekeeping, billing, and accounting. That is like a big one, right? And so just if it's a big red flag, cloud. This word, you work cloud. You're going to hear me say, I only work with cloud-based accounting softwares. I won't work with PC Law or Easy Law because they're server-based and they're not cloud-based. But PC Law is advertising a cloud-based version, and Easy Law also advertises a cloud-based version, but they're not really cloud-based, and I still can't work with them, and they provide no additional benefit to you than you would have by the old software. So the first thing I'm going to say is browser-based cloud. So you're not logging into this system through a browser primarily. That is a problem. And so Microsoft, it has it's all cloud, but you don't often, most law firms anyways, aren't using the cloud option, and therefore they're like saving documents and opening them and transferring them, but you can actually open those documents in a browser, and now you're operating the cloud in real time and getting that benefit of the cloud. And actually that's a really easy switch that a lot of firms should just start doing. Just the amount of time it takes to save a document, send it to somebody as an attachment, have them download it, edit it. Like, you can't collaborate. It's just so many benefits.
You know what the biggest frustration I always had back like a million years ago with server-based like Word and documents is when somebody edits it and you've edited it and now you have like two different versions and you're emailing and then you have like, you're naming it with the newest version and nobody knows which is the newest version. That happens so much.
It still happens in my business, you know what I mean? But yeah, so I think that's what you need to be careful of, is you have to move everything to cloud-based. Like, do not consider something that isn't cloud-based. Like, just exit immediately and like ask the question, do I log in through a browser? And if you don't get a straight up yes, then it's not cloud-based. And they're just pulling your chain and that's not a good option for you. So get everything cloud-based. Just get rid of those old traditional law, like, I'm just going to World Docs for document management. I know firms that are moving on to World Docs right now. Do not. You are stuck in there. Like, we're trying to get my data out of a very modern cloud-based document management system, or just like more tasks, into a new one, and they make it very difficult to leave because they don't want you to leave their software. And documents in law firms are huge, and you have to get out of there. And I think the document part is probably the hardest part to get out of, honestly. And it's the same with kind of everywhere. It's like with accounting, you kind of have to just pull the Band-Aid off. But I think it's important to educate yourself a little bit. And a good place I will recommend you start are my blogs. I have a blog called like the top Canadian, legal accounting softwares for law firms. Talk a lot about technology in there, and break down the different areas of business. So you'd have, I don't know, Celene, this is your area. Like, communications is almost one to me. Like, how do you communicate about stuff? Like, you're communicating in Teams. Like, most firms have implemented Teams at this point, but probably not given people instructions on how they're supposed to use Teams. So they probably removed quite a bit of their internal correspondence from email and moved it into Teams, which is great. But very few are actually using it to manage files, I bet. And obviously the biggest benefit to Teams would be using it to manage files because of that collaboration and because everyone can see it and it deals with this inbox problem and like, okay, inboxes. It's a problem for every business that provides services, in my opinion. Even at PROFiX, you have to have like a unified inbox for each client. You want to be able to go in and see the correspondence that everyone's had with the client, not just yourself. So law firms would generally do this by printing off paper and putting it into a correspondence file. Now it's sort of ad hoc. I think a lot of lawyers just like aren't saving them in an organized way, and they're struggling with that. And so when you get away from that, I have to only talk about work stuff through email and move into like, I have a Teams channel dedicated to this matter number, and all the correspondence internally about this matter also happens in here, and you can just get people to follow that. Like, now you're slick.
Yeah, I think a lot of it really does come down to designing that kind of workflow and those processes and making sure that not only are they kind of well designed, but they're documented so everyone can follow them, because that's like a really good way, like you said, having the correspondence and the file management in Teams. If you have a practice management software, you can also choose to have all your correspondence in the practice management software and the documents stored there. Sometimes though, I see like half of it's in Teams and half of it's there, and another half, I guess their thirds now are in email. Guilty. And nobody knows where to find anything. So it's really important to actually have those kind of systems and processes mapped out too, so that you're not just like sloppily using cloud-based software.
I think too, like everyone has not talked as much about like that big switch we made in the past 10 years, and also maybe in the past 2 years from like paperless from paper to paperless, because that's where things fall through the crack. When it used to be that you knew you had to print that email and put it in a pile, and once a week you had to go and file that into a folder, you knew what to do with it, right?
Yeah.
Now you don't necessarily maybe know what to do with it even. And that's where things are starting to fall through the cracks. And I think that is happening in kind of any area that you're making that switch, where people have been able to do something one way and now they have to rethink about the way that they're doing it. So I think there's a lot of processes missing from law. I think it's like you get the tech in, got to get the implementation done, which I think is the hardest, and then you got to get the processes down, and then you got to make sure that you can train new staff, because you can't expect people to come in and understand how to use new technology. And that sounds really hard, but it's pretty standard in most businesses, and it's really just comes down to like process mapping and understanding how your business works and understanding how everyone operates. which is all quite easy. You can pay any consultant to come in and show you how to do that, and you can actually pay consultants to come in and implement it for you and hold your hand through it. What you cannot pay consultants to come in and do is force your team to follow the processes that you've purchased, and that is on the owner of the law firm, and there's 0% chance that the project will be successful without that. And I think that's where I often see, well, always see the project go sideways, is a team member is not on board, like a very important team member, and there's just, that's it. That is the end. You're stuck in old law if you cannot get everyone on board who's important. And then law firms are really bad at this, very, very bad at it, but it's certainly a very important part of running a business and scaling and growing is like making people follow process. Like there's no out, like here's the process, and if you don't follow it, you get reminded of the process, and if you don't follow it a bunch of times, you get fired. And if your whole thing is, I'm not going to work here if I have to follow the process, like beat it then, because you're not going to be a good employee.
To work at.
Yeah, like sorry, like even if you're the smartest lawyer in the city and you have the biggest book of business, like that is just not the type of, that's old law.
Yeah, that mentality too.
That's
being like a lone wolf.
And it's like a business though. It's like old law style business, because a new law style business isn't going to have a culture already that's going to do that. They're going to be living in a different world. So not to say that person's old law, but to be like, when the management team is like, okay, you know, his assistant will figure it out, or her assistant will figure it out. That's just not competitive.
And I've seen that happen too, where everyone, or mostly everyone, is a well-oiled machine. Everyone's kind of doing it all the same. And then there's this person over here who isn't following the processes. You know, maybe they're sick or they leave or something happens. Nobody knows where any of their stuff is or what's going on because they're not in the loop. It's a liability. It's just working against everything else that the company's building. And
what happens is, though, the founders, and I'm guilty as charged times a million, so I have an EA who takes care of my life, is like, you're like, well, I don't always 100% follow the process. And like, oh, but it's like, you own the business. You can actually do whatever the hell you want, fact, but you have to make sure that everyone on your team, like, okay, if you have an office manager or a director of ops who is in charge of your process, it's fine for you as the founder to be like, I don't know, I'm going to follow it on the time, maybe I pay. But your director of ops has to be empowered to make sure everyone else in your firm follows that process. And it's fine, in my opinion, to be like, well, you know what? Anna can do whatever she wants because she owns the business. You don't. Go complain to Anna. And then when you come complain to Anna, I'm like, why didn't you listen to Celene? Get out of my office. What are you wasting my time right now?
I feel like sometimes I'm like, Anna, follow the process. Anna.
I mean, you guys yell at me all the time. I try my best. But you know, there's really no one to get you in trouble at the end of the day. But you know, my team, everyone at PROFiX follows the process. It's never been a problem at PROFiX to get people to follow the process. They want the process. People mostly just want to be told what to do, honestly.
They want to know if they're on the right track, if they're doing a good job. They want to know that, you know, they're especially like not part of things in like a social way, but in terms of like, they know where their role is, so they know what their expectations are. They know if they're meeting the expectations. Because if you have those set process and set expectations, people can either be like, oh, I am doing a good job at my job. I am not following the processes. I'm not getting my work done. I'm doing a bad job at my job. If you have no processes, people just don't really know where they are, and they tend to err on the side. Not everyone. Some people are really hard workers, but in general, without expectations and processes and fail safes, people just tend to kind of fall to the lower end of the lump and slack.
We just do the things. You just stop doing the things that aren't great to do, and then everyone has their own system. And like, oh my gosh, I'm guilty of this times a million. But everyone kind of figures that you figure out your own little system, right? You're like, oh, but then you know, as the owner, I'm constantly like, oh shit, well, it's like someone, I keep swearing on your podcast, I'm sorry. I don't know if you can edit those out. I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
This is not edited. Nothing's being edited. This is
oh
you.
God.
Unfiltered.
Sorry guys. All right, well, I'm swearing on the Ops podcast. I can't remember what I was saying, sorry.
That's all right. I think we're pretty close to kind of wrapping up, because I feel like we could, like, these are now branching off into new topics and new ideas in my mind for new episodes, because there's so many things we could talk about. But I'm just going to kind of recap the main ones that were the original point. I mean, this is all like casual chat anyway, so I'm not worried about tangents. But just to kind of recap, I guess new law, good, way of the future. Old law, not going to say bad, but you're probably going to experience more pain points and be more
less competitive,
Yeah.
Big challenges ahead, big projects should be talking about at your strategic planning. Don't know more than 2 years out for that big software change. Should be happening this year. Get that
The longer you
planning,
wait,
Q&A
the more it's
it.
going to cost you. And the harder it's going to be.
It's got to be like you got to be talking about it. Like it should be like strategic planning, implement. And like, you know, if you're a small firm, you don't have to implement yourself. I don't recommend implementing yourself. I don't implement myself everything at my firm. Again, time is money, especially if you're billing. There's consult like me and Celene is what we do, but also there's lots of support out there, no matter what kind of projects you're doing. So just
delegate.
Don't be the person where the project always stops. Get an EA. Delegate everything to your EA. It's the smartest thing I ever did.
Here's a plug for Kellen. Too bad
no one come near Kellen or you're dead. If any of you lawyers listening here come near my EA, I will personally find you. Don't even say her name, Celene. She's mine.
Just kidding. She's on your website. She's amazing. Yeah. She's not going anywhere.
She's the best.
Anyway, it was so great having you on here. And 100%, we are going to have follow-up episodes.
I'd love to. Anytime, Celene.
Anytime. Okay, let's just start another one. We'll change our clothes, pretend it's a new day. And
I can put my hoodie back on, though. Only if I can put a hoodie back on. I've been wearing non-hoodie clothes for far too long.
I'm very honored that you took your hoodie off from me today.
I thought a couple times about it. Had a little stain on it, though, so I knew it had to go.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye.